And from top tier threats, we have more top tier players to join them. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the 2023 Liverpool Pokémon Regional Championships. My name is Ben Kiriakou, joined here on the mic by Costa Didymos, and we are getting to the real business end of this tournament. We're in the top 8 now, and we're going to be able to showcase a couple of matches. But before we do that, for those of you that are only just joining, we've just had an absolutely fantastic top 16 match. Costa, tell us a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, it was Francesco versus Claudio, and it was very, very intense. I think there's a lot of situations going on between both players. We saw from Francesco's side there was that Razor Claw, Focus Energy, Hydreigon, might I tell you. It was definitely causing a bit of a ruckus there. Whilst over on Claudio's side, we did have a sort of situation where there was really good synergy of Murkrow, Volcarona, Meowscarada, and just being able to sort of limit down that Hydreigon. I think that was the main sort of battle. So at some point it was quite critical in that game 3. We saw the Meowscarada actually opt to go for knockoff onto the Hydreigon. And all of a sudden, once it was already set up with Focus Energy, those 100% accurate critical hits that would always land all of a sudden became 50%. And there were 2 critical subsequent turns that the Hydreigon did go for Draco Meteor and wasn't able to connect. And it was already at -4 special attack, going on to -6. So you can imagine the tiny amount of damage that it dealt onto a Flying Terra-type Dragonite, which was banded, might tell you. And it was very, very powerful.
Yeah, I saw a few clips from that game, and the Dragonite, I just kept looking back at the stream, and I was like, okay, that Dragonite's taking another KO.
Yep.
Oh, it's taking another KO.
Oh, it's taking another. Oh, switch down. Oh, it's taking another KO.
Yeah. So a really, really powerful way to train that, and great to see. Love seeing that Hydreigon as well.
How to train your dragon, right?
How to
train your dragon quite well. Definitely ask Claudio a couple of tips.
Yeah, well, hopefully we'll get to see him a little bit further along in the tournament. For now, we have a couple of players, one of which we've not been able to showcase so far. Kurt Wonka, one of the players in our top 8. Really looking forward to seeing what they're bringing, how they're going to be playing, because clearly it's working and it's doing very well in this tournament so far.
Yeah, and I think Kurt, I've had the pleasure of meeting him as well. He is from Austria, and he has been attempting to participate in as many events as he could. I believe in Sword and Shield, he was trying to do as well, him and his good friend Christian. And in the situation, being able to actually see him come to the fore right now, reach top 8, I'm incredibly proud and happy for him, and I know that he would have put a lot of work into crafting his art as best as possible with the team. So I'm absolutely excited to see what he has in store for us today.
Right, and we saw Faaiz yesterday on stream and got a chance to have a chat to him, talk a little bit more about his team. There was a Dondozo set that we had a little bit more of a chat about with a Yawn rather than any kind of health recovery moves like Rest or other options that Dondozo has that players have been opting for. Doing a lot of work in combination with that Toxic Debris from the Glamora. So really brilliant to see him still in the tournament in our top 8. Clash of the Titans at this stage.
It really is. And I think I do want to make a mention as well with the sort of team structure that Faaiz has brought. There's a lot of sort of punishes in regards to status ailments that it's able to sort of inflict onto its opponents, whether through Yawn, whether through Toxic, and then you have the passive sort of protect spiky shields, because you want to try to make sure that you're dealing residual damage or at least incapacitating your opponent's Pokemon as much as possible. So a lot of control-based play style coming from Faaiz.
Yeah, you're really forcing your opponent to play your game, which is kind of what VGC can be all about. You don't really want to be playing your opponent's strategy. You want to be executing your own strategy and figuring out the best way to do that. Funny enough, I've never seen sleep as a way to get poison going. But hey, you know what? It's clearly doing what it was intended to.
It really, really is. But of course, we are really looking forward to seeing our trainers. And the match is currently being set up from what we have been told. It is quite tough. reaching this stage as well, Ben. You know, you're in top 8 right now. The goal is so near. You can see it in the distance around the corner, but you know that you need to try to keep the momentum going. The mental state needs to be absolutely clear with clarity, and you need to do some really good revision around your flowcharts.
Right, because these open team sheet formats, especially when you reach the top cut, all 32 teams of the tournament are published. They were published yesterday.
Yep.
If you've been keeping up with all of the updates on the Victory Road Twitter account. So all of these players get to study up the night before on the teams that all of the players in the bracket are using.
A lot of homework.
Absolutely, some light bedtime reading, and that's going to be really both increasing the quality of play, I think, because you can form some game plans, take away some surprises, make sure that you know exactly how you're going to approach a matchup, and so you can kind of see from your side of the bracket what you might be facing along the way.
Yeah, and I think it enhances the sort of analytical level of understanding flowcharts and sort of going into mind games. And I think from a spectator point of view, it really makes it exciting to be able to see that additional advanced layer into understanding what is going on between these trainers when they're making the decisions that they do. You know, something that may look a bit obvious, like, oh, okay, they went for Fake Out into Volcarona. Oh, but there's a Flame Body activation. It's like, no, there's a reason why the Fake Out went there. They took that risk on purpose because they wanted to incapacitate that Pokemon intentionally to better improve their own board state going into these subsequent turns.
And it's, it's layers upon layers upon layers. These players are making predictions, but now it's not in a vacuum. You don't have to account for, okay, I haven't seen that fourth move on any particular Pokemon that you're playing against. You know exactly what the options are, and so all of that calculation, all of that thought process, when these players make a read, it's based on specific information that they already know. And of course, there's a little bit of, did you meet in the Swiss yesterday? Did you have any friends that maybe competed against those sort of players? All of those little speed interactions, and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, I played them in the Swiss yesterday, and that Golden Go took a lot more damage to be able to be knocked out than I expected. So going into this, need to focus that down a little bit harder.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, like you mentioned, it's also about understanding the sort of play style that your opponent's going to have. Are they going to be playing a bit more defensive, a bit more aggressive? Do they like going for those reads? When do they like going for these reads? Do they like going for them in the beginning of the game, in the middle of the game? Do they feel that they're compelled to go for these actions when they feel like they've got the back against the wall? It allows a sort of better way to paint the picture on what win conditions you have to do, and you can weigh the different sort of possibilities of chance. Let's say, okay, I may go for a risky play now, but will it take away my current board position to the point where I may end up losing this dramatically?
Right, but of course, at the same time, you've got to remember where these players are in the stage of the tournament. We're not playing Swiss anymore.
No.
There's no more rounds after this. If you get knocked out, you're out of the tournament. And so all of these players have got to really take control of their nerves, understand all of those factors in making their turns and deciding on how to play. But also, if there's a time to take a risk for a reward, this is it. There is no other opportunities.
There really, really isn't. So being able to, of course, combat against each other at the highest levels of competition is what we're here for. It's what we're excited for. And, of course, I imagine what you lovely people at home are excited for as well. So I do believe we are still trying to go ahead and get those trainers set up, but it should be coming up right now. As we can see, they have both been seeded. They are going to be going ahead and actually exchanging those team lists right now. Give a bit more analysis, but I don't expect these trainers to be unfamiliar with the other person's team list, given, like you said, they were published yesterday.
Exactly. They should be pretty well aware. They'll have known the matchup as they were walking to the table, probably having a little bit of a double check, but it's always worth it at this stage of the tournament. You can't have anything go to chance. No. Just make sure you take your opponent's team sheet, have a little scan and just double check.
Yeah, act like you're a bit unfamiliar with it. You're like, oh, I'm not a bit too sure what's going on here. But it's like, no, I know exactly what's going on.
The mind games don't start in the game. They're going on right before trainers locking eyes, right?
Oh, exactly. The moment that you're approaching the stage, you know the game's on. It's afoot. But, of course, I think seeing Kurt having that additional support of those cute little plushies as well by their side. And we are looking now at Faaiz, of course. Faaiz, we know, one of those leading sort of role models when it comes to the German community. You know, Faaiz has had outstanding achievements across the years. So being able to see him keep that consistency up is really key and pivotal to what is really important for VGC trainers nowadays, that consistency.
Exactly that, and Faaiz was telling me yesterday this is the first time that they've been able to travel outside of their home nation of Germany to compete. So really looking forward to seeing if Faaiz can take it all of the way the first time they come out of their home nation. Kurt, of course, a player that we didn't get to feature yesterday, is going to be going for the top spots as well.
Yep.
And really excited, as you were saying earlier, like, you know, this is early in their VGC career, effectively, in their opportunity to play in these sort of live events. So really bringing everything to the stage here.
Yeah, it really, really is. So, of course, the trainers will be going ahead and analyzing their teams. However, we will go ahead and just remind the audience very quickly about it in just a short moment, as I think we just wanted to highlight at the moment Faiz's achievements. Of course, the 2019 European Internationals Top 32 was a great stage that he was able to go ahead and reach, as well as a bit of a veteran, and I think you may be familiar with as well, Ben. 2014 Germany Nationals Top 16. Wow, remember when we used to have Nationals?
I think I came 22nd at that tournament.
Did you?
Yeah, which...
Didn't quite make the cut.
Didn't quite make the cut. I didn't have a very good time in Germany back in the day, but Faaiz clearly has. And Kurt, as we were saying before, you know, hasn't been to as many live events, hasn't had the opportunity to get those achievements that we can put on the scoreboard. But if you look at the Swiss rounds, 8-1 on Kurt's side and 7-2 on Faiz's side. So, you know, not completely clear from the historic achievements which of these players will come out victorious. It will be down to who's on form, who's making those correct calls, and of course, a little bit of that team matchup.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's quite poetic that Kurt does have both a Pelipper in-game as well as a Pelipper as a plushie on the table. Quite nice and very well prepared. But of course, what we can do is go ahead and break down the teams very quickly between these two trainers. We'll start off with Faaiz, of course, where they will be bringing that Blaze Breed Paldean Tauros, Tatsugiri Curly Form. We'll be seeing the Glamora, the Golden Go, the Dondozo, and the Meowscarada.
Right, and that Glamora we were talking about a little bit earlier was one of the key Pokemon in both the way that Faaiz plays the team, but also in the way that, it was really effective in the previous match. We saw Sludge Bomb do so much damage. Focus Sash is an item that allows it to be able to run the maximum amount of offensive capability that it can. And we saw it just did lots of damage, Costa, right? Yeah. Really a lot of damage. So we'll have to see if that's impactful here. I'm looking forward to seeing how the Taurus interacts because of that Mirror Herb item as well. So if there's any stat boost from, say, the King Gambit on Kurt's side of the field, it's going to be able to steal that +2 boost, and we'll have to see if that's impactful at all in this particular matchup.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Golden Go we've seen previously and even during this tournament has liked running additional damage boosting items such as the Choice Specs, even Life Orb, but having the Aguav Berry is quite nice. I personally have ran Leftovers Golden Go quite a bit on the in-game ladder as well, so it really does pay off quite nicely. But in this situation, actually having it have the instant recovery once it does reach that hit point threshold is quite nice and may give a bit of an indication of how this Golden Go is trained.
Right, and now we're getting to the other side of the desk here. Kurt's on your screen right now with his team, and I'm really excited to see that Palafin and Pelipper combination coming out here. But of course, we've got the haze on the Palafin as well. Really impactful here. And surely the reason that Kurt's been able to get through all of those Dondozo matchups on the way through to the top cut. Kurt also running the Sharp Beak, Terra Flying, and Terra Blast Dragonite. Not quite the choice band we saw in the previous round, but that's going to be doing a lot of damage as well.
It really will, and I think we were just talking about it. We did just feature that Terra Flying Dragonite, which was really, really nice. It does deal a lot of damage with the Terra Blast. We know that Dragonite might not get the most powerful physical flying type moves. However, it does make a lot of sense with that Sharp Beak too. And going on to the Golden Go, for example, there is a Thunder, which does marry quite nicely into this Rain archetype that Kurt is bringing as well, especially bolstered by that Life Orb, Ben.
That's going to be doing a lot of damage. We saw Thunderbolt on stream yesterday doing really a lot of work on its own. That wasn't boosted by the Rain and being the higher base power of Thunder. So that's going to be doing a lot of work here if Kurt's able to connect that. We're going into game 1 now. This is the top 8. So Kurt Wonka again, Faaiz Ashfaq. We're going to be seeing the game from Faiz's side of the field, I believe. Oh, no, from Kurt's side of the field, I believe.
Yes, indeed. The Palafin is on the field, and we do know, as Palafin does tend to do, it tends to want to switch out immediately in order to activate the Zero to Hero ability and bring in its Hero form, which we know is very, very powerful. However, Faaiz, on the other hand, has brought this Dondozo. We've seen Faaiz do this play in yesterday's stream, where you're able to slowly build up Yawn pressure and get that sort of revolving door of Yawn, a loop, or vortex, I think you named, which is quite nice.
It certainly is. As Spiky Shield comes off from the Glamora, Palafin going straight for the Jet Punch, so no switches out this turn. A Sucker Punch failing into that Glamora spot as well. And a Body Press to reply. King Gambit living on a sliver. What a start to the game for Faaiz, being able to dodge any damage. Correctly predicting that Palafin wasn't actually going to be switching out and just going on the defensive. I think that's a play that can catch players off guard, because that switch out, especially when it doesn't have the flip turn, is so telegraphed on that Palafin. But sometimes you have to remember that Palafin's still a Pokemon before it gets its Zero to Hero ability.
Exactly. As talking about Palafin, we're going to be seeing it switch out right now for the Golden Go. And I think something that we did make note of there is the Sucker Punch play from Kurt. Made sense, wanted to try to break that focus sash on the Glamora, but Faaiz was a step ahead in that situation.
Right.
As we are going to be seeing the Pelipper now does come onto the field, so double switch from Kurt's side will be bringing the rain, quite literally. And the Toxic, ooh, very nice switch there. Does actually target down that Golden Go. And of course, due to the Good as Gold ability, it's not affected. It is immune, as well as, I guess, the Steel type too, to add to that. But the Yawn, however, does connect with that Pelipper.
Now, Faaiz was telling us yesterday that the Yawn has been so impactful in their play across the Swiss. We're seeing it here already on the field, doing loads and loads of work. But that Thunder is on the field. There's the rain from the Pelipper. So Golden Go is putting a lot of pressure onto this Dondozo. Doesn't need the Pelipper to stick around at this point. So it looks like it's not leaving the field, but and will be going for a sleep. But is that a Terra coming out?
That is a Terra, and it's a ground Terra on that Glamora, going for now the same type attack bonus boosted Earth Power. Oh, just misses the KO. Does drop the special defense of the Golden Go, but of course that doesn't matter. And look at that animation, and look at that KO onto the Dondozo from the Thunder, my lord. That dealt so much damage as well at the cost of the Golden Go. Now getting KO'd to its own recoil damage.
That's a trade. I think it's a struggle to decide on whether that's in Kurt's favor or in Faiz's favor. Like, these two Pokemon traded each other. The Golden Go's now not on the field, not going to be putting any pressure on. That's going to make the Glamora a little bit more scary, I think, especially in its ground Terra form. Going to be able to do quite a lot of damage and going to be boosting up the power of its Earth Power. So if that King Gambit... Oh, I suppose the King Gambit's not on a lot of health, actually, so maybe the Glamora's not quite as influential as I thought. Tatsugiri, though, coming onto the field, unfortunately without its partner Dondozo, but we've seen it is carrying that citrus berry. It's quite bulky from what we saw yesterday, and so launching out these Muddy Waters, Pelipper doesn't have the opportunity to go for a wide guard. It isn't on the set, so he's going to be quad resisting the jet punches, etc., coming out from the Palafin, and going to be able to drop some Muddy Waters, especially in the rain. That's going to do quite a bit of damage, as well as potential Draco Meteors here.
However, we're going to be seeing the Palafin go for a protect. Glimora following suit with its own spiky shield, which is quite pointy from what I've been told. The Pelipper will be taking its mandatory turn of sleep now as well. And the Tatsugiri, however, does actually target the Pelipper slot, does deal really good damage at the cost, of course, of its special attack being dropped down to -2 of its stages. Whilst Pelipper does get a tiny bit of recovery there. So that's something that I did want to make a note of as well there, Ben. The previous turn, Pelipper was willing to stay in to actually incur the sleep status via the Yawn for the sake of Tailwind being set up.
Yeah, and we'll have to see if that Tailwind is actually too impactful here, because you have that Jet Punch with the Palafin that's priority, so maybe, there's no actual need to have the Tailwind up. We did see Kurt go for a little bit of a wave crash there, as the Palafin is going to be Terra going for its Terra form, increasing the damage of that water type attack.
And talking about water, we see this very powerful water type Terra from this Palafin. Of course, I don't even think it needed the water type Terra, if I'm completely honest, to bring that Glimora down to its Focus Sash, that item being quite useful in this scenario, as Pelipper still asleep right now. It did have a chance to wake up, but unfortunately did not do so. But the Sludge Bomb, not quite enough to pick up the KO. Cannot set a poison status onto the Pelipper because it is currently asleep. However, the Tatsugiri stays on the field, Ben, and actually stops Palafin from going for any sort of status type moves.
Yeah, and there's a little bit of a telegraph here. I think the Meowscarada is likely the Pokemon in the back here for Faaiz. The Taunt is really effective for stopping any protects, as you mentioned, from that Palafin there. Jet Punch going into that spiky shield is going to be giving that Palafin a little bit of recoil, and we'll have to see if this Pelipper does indeed wake up.
Oh, and it does. It goes for the Hurricane. That is dispatched onto the Tatsugiri. Like you mentioned, not a lot of damage due to that potential bulk that the Tatsugiri most definitely has trained in itself, but it didn't even need the additional neutrality of its special attack stages to pick up the KO, whilst at -2, now at -4 onto the Pelipper, as we do see both the Rain and Tailwind subside.
And now we've got two Pokemon with priority attacks, and strong priority attacks too as well. The Kingambit potentially could be able to knock out the Tatsugiri from this sort of range, and I would expect a Muddy Water or a Draco Meteor to be able to do 13 hit points of damage to that Kingambit, but not this turn, as Tatsugiri goes for the Protect.
Goes for the Protect, whilst we are going to be seeing the Palafin does, of course, target down the Glimora with the Jet Punch. It will pick up the KO, and I think Kingambit-wise, it can only go for attacks right now. And what I did quite like there is being able to preserve the Kingambit in the back for Kurt means that it's not going to be affected by any sort of toxic debris. And neither was the Pelipper if that was the choice of Pokemon in the back due to its flying type.
No, and, I think in this sort of matchup, the toxic debris kind of needs to go up early in the game for it to be impactful. As we get to this stage of the game, it's sort of a little bit less worrisome. Meowscarada is the Pokemon in the back, so, happy to see that for Faaiz. He's going to be able to go for flower tricks and other quite damaging attacks here, but the Taunt did wear off, I believe, onto that Palafin, so Sucker Punch coming out from the Kingambit, knocking it out in one.
Nice play from Faaiz. I think he had to go for that in order to avoid the double priority attacks from both the Palafin as well as the Kingambit. However, no priority move from that Palafin. Goes for the Wave Crash, actually picks up the KO because of how high of a damage and how many multipliers there are taken into consideration with that calculation, as Draco Meteor -4, not quite enough to do the job. Palafin all of a sudden just looked at Meowscarada and said, I see no resistance.
Yeah, exactly. Palafin, though, the last turn was a little bit more complicated, right? Because you have to decide if the Meowscarada is going to get Sucker Punched and Jet Punched at the same time. Maybe that means that you're not going to be able to act. But Kurt correctly predicting that the Wave Crash and Sucker Punch combination was the likely way that they were going to get a bit more out of that turn, depending on the scenarios. And now we're seeing, like, okay, Palafin's going for a 4 times resisted Jet Punch. Okay, it's Terra, sure, but Tatsugiri is part water, part dragon. That quad resists water-type damage, and you can see that Citrus Berry coming out. Clearly, this is trained quite well as a Tatsugiri, and we'll have to see if a -6 Draco Meteor can finish the job.
Oh my lord, it's quite tense right now because you've got a lot of situations that Kurt does not want to waste even a single health point at the moment from their side of the field, but they want to try to target down the correct time to go for Wave Crashes to try to capitalize off of maximum damage as opposed to Jet Punch. Faaiz, on the other hand, wants to play a bit more passive, potentially pick up a crit if they can, but then again, both trainers, I feel, are, no pun intended, fishing for a crit. I had to, I'm sorry.
Oh, Costa. This is why we love you behind the desk, because it's moments like this that make it all worthwhile. Another wave, Wave Crush going into the Tatsugiri there. Definitely not doing enough damage, and that is the final Draco Meteor. Faaiz taking the first game of this top 8 set, and we'll be going to our game 2.
Yes, game 2. A lot of things to take into consideration from that match. Very, very close at the end there. I think Tatsugiri not being locked into a choice item, such as, for example, Choice Scarf, is really, really cool because there was a taunt situation which kind of forced a certain play from Kurt's side of the field. Palafin can only go for damage. So at least you're trying to, once again, control what sort of play style your opponent is forced into.
Right, and, you know, looking back at that game, there's a few other points that are worth mentioning. That Golden Go, being able to go for the Thunder and being able to knock out the Dondozo in one.
Yeah.
There was definitely an opportunity there for Tatsugiri to come onto the field and combine with the Dondozo, boost up its stats, do a little bit more, and be able to survive that Thunder, but that wasn't the case. Terror Ground on the Glimora, showing why it's a move of choice in this scenario. But, of course, Kurt training the Golden Go on his side of the field to be just strong enough to be able to take that hit.
Yeah, because that was very, very crucial. Just imagine the fact that that would have been game-changing. If, in all honesty, the Dondozo would not have been dispatched of if that Earth Power did connect. So given that it survived on 3 hit points, it may have even come down to a calculation, maybe to a roll, perhaps, that would have been a factor going into it, because I imagine Kurt would not have had perfect access to Faiz's Pokemon with how well trained, for example, in Special Attack or Earth Power, you know, especially with the Ground Terror type there is. But, of course, in that situation, there was a lot going on both trainers' side of the field.
Right, and now going into game 2, these players have got to adjust and decide on how they're going to be approaching this second game. I think from Kurt's side, we saw Faaiz play quite defensively with the Glimora. I think there's an opportunity there for Kurt to adjust their play and be able to, you know, take advantage of those spiky shields. We saw like 1 or 2 occasions where Kurt was attacking into that spiky shield, taking a little bit of recall. That may have mattered in the end game. But more importantly, you know, target the partner, right? And be able to do as much damage as possible. We saw in the mid game a little bit of adjustment there, and Kurt kind of playing into that play style of Faaiz. But I think it was a little bit late to make the impact it needed to.
No, I think it's quite tough going up against a trainer that, especially during turn 1, when you feel like you've been put on the back foot, it's quite hard to come back from. But I think Kurt did try to readjust his plays quite nicely. However, like you said, maybe a little bit too late. However, we've got game 2. And the leads are Palafin, Meowscarada over on Kurt's side, whilst we've got Meowscarada and Tatsugiri on the other. One cat and fish aside for both.
One cat and a fish.
There we go.
Absolutely. These cats are going to be quite happy going into this turn, and especially because they have Pokemon to target down. Wouldn't be surprised to see the Meowscarada want to, break some focus sashes here and there and do a little bit of damage. Of course, the Palafin likely to be targeted down and would get the one-hit knockout. I wouldn't be surprised, though, if Tatsugiri on Faiz's side of the field would be able to survive that attack.
Ooh, so Flower Trick going into the protect from Palafin there, wanting to make sure that slot does not take any sort of damage there. Whilst talking about damage, we see the low kick going into the opposing Meowscarada, deals a lot of damage and health, whilst on the other hand, Tatsugiri nearly goes ahead and brings Meowscarada down, only allowing it to survive on 9 hit points without proccing the Focus Sash.
No, and I really like that play from both players actually attacking into these Meowscaradas. They're definitely under threat now. That's presumably why Kurt has decided to preserve Meowscarada on his side of the field and bring in that Pelipper. Would like to see this Palafin outside of his zero to hero form, or his hero form, should I say, going for that Terror. It may be in Jet Punch range.
It may be in Jet Punch range, and this may be an absolutely amazing play coming up from Kurt. We are going to be seeing the Jet Punch. The rain is in effect. The Water-type Terror is in effect.
Yes!
And it picks up the KO, man. My lordy. There we go. Who needs to be a hero? Just stay 0, and you're going to be able to still do the job.
Do you know what? I think that Palafin is the real hero of this tournament. Muddy Water following it up. It has had the 2 stages of decreased special attack coming out. The rain's boosting it back up again, but Palafin shrugging that off like a champ.
Really, really doing quite well with that. Champ. We're going to be seeing Glamora now come onto the field, and Glamora in a situation that it's at, of course, it wants to go ahead and put that pressure on. Palafin may be tempted to switch out right now. It did the job that it needed to during that turn. Now it wants to try to go ahead and actually get some sort of preservation or a change in its form. However, Protect comes out, so it's a bit of a board state passive play.
It is, and I really like this style of play from the Palafin. You mentioned it earlier, Costa. Palafin is telegraphed to be swapping out, and so you can just catch that with a Protect in this particular scenario. Taunt coming out onto the Pelipper, but not falling for it. Unfortunately for Kurt, a miss on the Hydro Pump. And of course, that Glamora did attack with a Sludge Bomb into Palafin's Protect.
It's quite tough because that was a really cool play, expecting a potential taunt, going to break the Focus Sash and deal so much damage, bring it down to 1 HP on the Glamora. However, most optimal play, but there is that accuracy to take into effect. Maybe it could have even been better if you wanted to play a bit more safe. Go for the Hurricane, at least to break the Focus Sash for that turn.
Yeah, indeed, as Meowscarada coming in for that Palafin now, probably Kurt allowing it to, just take an easy knockout, get the Palafin back in its hero form. As we see there, the Glamora is taking the KO. Tatsugiri swapping out for the Dondozo, resetting its boosts, and being able to come in and threaten those Yawns. But Hydro Pump does connect this time. The Glamora is going to be going down to its Focus Sash, and because that Hydro Pump doesn't make contact, there is no toxic debris on the field.
Indeed, but guess who is coming back onto the field? Upgraded. Or upgraded, apologies. Definitely not upgraded. With, of course, the Palafin being able to dispatch a lot of damage right now. We've said that the Palafin does have access to Haze, which, for example, if we do see Dondozo try to get that Commander mode going at any point, it can get nullified. Sludge Bomb coming out there, proccing the Citrus Berry on Pelipper.
It is indeed, and a really offensive turn here coming out from that Glamora. Wave Crash going into the Dondozo, doing so much damage. Oh my god. If it was a hero before, what is it now? I don't even know. Hurricane following up from that Dondozo with a critical hit is able to pick up the KO, and wow, what a turn. Unlikely that Dondozo was going to be knocked out from a Hurricane from that range, and now the combination of Tatsugiri in the back and being able to come and combine with that Dondozo for all of those stat boosts is no longer an option.
What a crashing display of waves and hurricanes in combination. We're going to be seeing Palafin go for the Jet Punch now into that Limora. Of course, will be making sure to pick up the KO whilst proccing that toxic debris. We know that there is some good plays that Kurt can go for if, of course, he does have access to either the King Gambit in the back or that Golden Go. Whilst the Draco Meteor, not quite enough to pick up the KO on Pelipper, which will allow it to get that Tailwind set up.
Right, and this Tatsugiri is really low in terms of its special attack now, and obviously the only Pokemon left on the field. There is a Pokemon in the back. It could be that Golden Go.
Ooh.
It could be the King Gambit. We won't know, and we won't find out. More importantly, neither will Faaiz, and that's a bit of information preservation that is still in play in VGC. Both the way that the Pokemon are trained, obviously these trainers don't get to exchange that particular information, but the information that they can preserve is the fourth Pokemon that they brought to a particular game.
Yeah, and there's a lot going into this at this point. I think there's a lot of information to process. Kurt did astoundingly well on being able to bring that pressure and absolutely catapult it back to Faaiz in such an exceptional display. I think that's got to be one of my top moments so far of the stream this weekend. Being able to have a regular form Palafin go for the Water type Terra, bring the Pelipper in, pick up the Jet Punch KO when that Meowscarada was at about half HP, I think, and just being able to just get rid of a very important piece from Faiz's side.
Yeah, when you're preparing for tournaments, you don't necessarily go, okay, right, so if I low kick the Meowscarada on the opposing side of the field, can I Jet Punch in hero form to be able to knock it out?
Yeah.
Maybe it is something, it's a relevant Pokemon, certainly, but sometimes you have to adapt to those things on the fly.
Yes.
Regardless of the scenario, it worked out perfectly for Kurt and really did allow him to be able to put on all of that offensive pressure. Meowscarada does quite a lot of work against Palafin, so removing it early is such an instrumental game plan in Kurt's arsenal here, and definitely something that Faaiz is going to have to watch out for going into Game 3.
And it was very smart, that turn 1 low kick into the opposing Meowscarada to put it within range. It's as if it was telegraphed, and it was very well executed from Kurt's side of the field. But there was also something to factor in as well in that game too. We had the Palafin, honestly, dealing so much damage that it really, really shouldn't, onto that Dondozo, dealing half of its HP's worth with the Wave Crash, and then the double up of the Hurricane of the Pelipper, actually picking up a critical hit, KOing that Dondozo.
And another switch up coming out here. We're going into Game 3. Dondozo Meowscarada coming out onto the field for Faaiz, and Pelipper Palafin leading out from Kurt's side of the field. Hey, do you know what? Like, based on the last game, we saw that the Palafin didn't need to switch out before, switching back in the rain to be able to do so much damage with its Terra type. So, hey, Kurt's thinking, let's just lead with it.
Let's just lead with it, because we most definitely can. As the Palafin once again going for the protect, going for that passive play, but we're going to be seeing a knockoff. Absolutely ignoring that Palafin going into the Pelipper slot does knock off its Citrus Berry. However, the Tailwind will still be set up. Do we see a double up targeting? We do indeed.
Ooh.
Wave Crash in the rain, taking advantage of it. Ooh, just missing out on the KO, surviving on 8 hit points.
Yeah, this Meowscarada, though, does have access to Sucker Punch now, and so, the Tailwind's set up, but that Pelipper is dangerously low. If it was the case that Kurt was able to get a cheeky little Hurricane into the Meowscarada on Faiz's side of the field, this could have been a slightly different board state, but certainly a Sucker Punch to watch out for here.
Yeah, most definitely, as Dragonite is actually going to be switching in for the Palafin. You want to be able to get that Hero Form activation going, as Meowscarada, wanting to make sure that its position is not jeopardized there, goes for Protect, wisely so, as the Hurricane does try to target it down, but this allows the Dondozo to just have free reign to start going for the Yawn Vortex.
Yes, going to be getting the Yawn onto that Dragonite. It's going to be feeling a little bit drowsy. This Dragonite is going to be running the Sharp Beak and has Terra Blast, so if it had something like a dual Wing Beat, it would be able to... in fact, actually, no, I tell a lie. Meowscarada is holding a Life Orb on Faiz's side, not a Focus Sash. So the Terra Blast, if this Dragonite goes for Terra Flying, is going to be able to knock it out in one. But it's such a pivotal piece of Kurt's game plan that he definitely doesn't want it asleep, going to be switching it out for that Palafin.
So it's going to be interesting to see what the trainers will be going for here. Meowscarada actually not wanting to, once again, jeopardize its situation. It goes for the switch out, willing to break the Glamora's Focus Sash. Really nice play here. However, Pelipper actually going for the Protect, so Kurt wanting to be a bit more passive, but I have a bad feeling. Oh, it doesn't actually happen, the bad feeling. I would have expected a Yawn straight back into that slot. We did actually see Faaiz wanting to prioritize getting rid of Pelipper to allow for less riddle room for Kurt to be able to get those switches going.
Right, and yeah, now it's a difficult position to be in for Kurt. Faaiz has done a really good job of keeping the pressure on Kurt while these tailwind turns are getting up. There's only one more tailwind turn left, and so, you know, Kurt really hasn't been able to capitalize on that speed advantage in this turn.
No, most definitely not, as we're going to be seeing the Golden Go actually come out, I believe, for the first time during this set. Or actually, apologies, the second time, as the Palafin goes for the Protect. Once again, seeing that Glamora following suit with its own spiky shield. And then again, the Dondozo pretty much doing the same. However, the Protect does fail, which does mean that it does have it accessible going into this turn, whilst Tailwind has now expired.
Right, and it's certainly a move to be wary of here. Although the Glamora could opt to go for that ground-type Terra yet again. It is carrying the Focus Sash, so the Jet Punch from the Palafin, or the Wave Crash, of course, would be able to take it down to its Sash, but the Glamora would be able to go before the Golden Go.
Exactly that, and reminiscing back to the previous game, we know that Thunder in the rain with Life Orb from this Golden Go is very, very powerful. However, it's just going to be going for a more defensive play. Wanting to go for Protect. Jet Punch does break that Focus Sash. It brings Glamora down to its single digit of hit point that does remain. And we are going to be seeing, naturally, Toxic Debris that is now set on the field. What does this Dondozo do is the real question. But before we find out, Sludge Bomb goes into that slot. We're going to be seeing a double up, bringing that Palafin quite down in regarding to its remaining hit points.
Yeah, I love that play, actually, from both players. The Glamora goes down to its Focus Sash. That means that the Golden Go is effectively safe to go for that Thunder, right? Because now the Palafin can just Jet Punch at the Glamora. If it goes for a Spiky Shield, you still get the Thunder into the Dondozo. If the Glamora switches to Tatsugiri, you get a little bit of damage. Oh, sorry, you miss the damage, but you still get the Thunder into the Dondozo. So both players doing quite a lot of work this time because that Palafin is now looking like it's under threat.
Exactly, as I was going to mention, Kurt did have the option for going for the raw potential inaccurate Thunder outside of rain, but he has opted to bring that Pelipper back onto the field, which of course has been preserved to reset the weather, and we are going to be seeing a terrestrialization of this Dondozo. No longer a habitant of the water typing, it is now a steel type.
Yeah, and still such a great defensive typing here. Earth Power going to be following up into the Golden Go and doing a good chunk of damage. Wouldn't be surprised if the Wave Crash would be able to follow it up, but there is that Thunder. Dondozo no longer weak to it, just taking a little bit more than half of its hit points. Opting for the Yawn here, we do have leftovers recovery on this Dondozo as well, so it's going to be able to recover a little bit of health, and of course, with the Protect that it also has access to, very likely that it will be able to survive the second Thunder.
Yeah, exactly that, and it's quite telling because we had Kurt in the previous turn, had the capability of going for that Thunder, but Faaiz made the prediction that the Thunder will not be coming out that turn, hence why he didn't go ahead and actually get that terrestrialization going. We're going to be seeing the Glamora has now dispatched of the Pelipper. No more rain will be able to be set up other than, of course, coins. Flattering about the battlefield as the Golden Go does pick up the KO onto the Glamora, gets rid of that situation, but it's quite tough going up against this steel-type Dondozo, which has proved to be quite a machine.
It certainly has. I like to make it rain there from Kurt. You just like make sure that you're getting spread damage on the field. That means that if the Glamora goes for an attack as it did onto the Pelipper, that you still get damage onto the field. You're still going to do a little bit to the Dondozo if it decides to attack this turn. But a Pokemon coming in here that I didn't expect to see in this matchup. Taurus coming in against a Rain team, getting that Intimidate off onto Kurt's side of the field, and because this Dragonite is carrying the multi-scale ability, will have its attack lowered.
It really will indeed, and it's quite fascinating to actually see Tauros being brought here from Faiz's side. It must have been thinking about the potential Meowscarada, maybe even King Gambit that it wanted to try to counter.
Right.
Because we do know, of course, that there is that Mirror Herb availability on the Tauros, which does have that very cool interaction of Intimidate, proccing Defiant, which procs that Mirror Herb and brings it back up to +2. But, oh no, here it is, Dragonite terrestrializing into the Flying type.
I love the flying type Terra, especially on the Dragonite. It's got its little balloons, it's going for big damage, and now the Flare Blitz, even muted by the rain, is easily able to dispatch that Golden Go on Kurt's side of the field. Tauros taking a little bit of recoil for its troubles, and the Dragonite responding in kind with a Terra Blast.
Oh!
Wow, that Tauros able to survive the hit. The Intimidate coming in absolutely clutch there. Dragonite feeling a little bit sleepy. He's having too much fun, I think, with all those balloons floating about in the air, and now wanting to have a little bit of an upper field.
Yeah, I think he definitely has to, after the fact that he didn't pick up that KO there, which really could have been quite useful for Kurt here. We're going to be seeing the Palafin, due to the previously set Toxic Debris, which is now Toxic Spikes, has been poisoned, so there is a ticking time counter that is essentially reducing that Palafin's damage by health by residual damage at the end of each turn.
Right, and now this Dragonite and Palafin are the last two Pokemon on Kurt's side of the field. The Dragonite's not going to be able to switch out, so expecting a defensive play here from Faaiz. Both of the Dondozo and the Tauros are going to be going for the Protect, not taking any damage, getting a little bit of leftovers recovery, and making sure both that Thread of Dragonite is going to be going to sleep, but also the Palafin takes a little bit of poison recoil as well to attacks going into the Protect from Kurt's side of the field and not doing any damage, but Dragonite going to sleep here.
This is really critical right now. We've got a lot of different factors to take into consideration. The poison on Palafin, the leftovers on Dondozo, which allows it to further increase its HP remaining, as well as the Dragonite, which is now put to sleep. I think Kurt really needed that Tauros to go down to allow and open up the Palafin to pick up a KO within the rain, Wave Crash onto the Dondozo if it can. It's no longer the Water type. And then we've got the Glamora in the back as well, down to its Focus Sash, which could have been dispatchable. But Faaiz going ahead and really putting on his own tempo into this match.
Right, and the Dondozo's, I think, really the threat in the end game here, because it can just retreat, as we're seeing now, into that Glamora. The Glamora's kind of not really doing too much at this stage. Instead, it's going to be the Meowscarada, but the point still remains that Dondozo is able to keep itself healthy and come in when the Palafin is no longer a threat. Protect there from the Palafin, though, not going to be doing any damage this turn, as a close combat does launch out into it from this Tauros, and Dragonite burning its mandatory turn of sleep.
Yeah, and we're going to be seeing the rain now does subside. Apologies, I did misspeak there. I did actually mean the Meowscarada in the back. However, we're in a situation where Kurt is running out of time, and I don't think he's got enough in the tank to be able to pull this back.
No, it's going to be really tough. Protect's coming out there from Tauros, and the Dragonite still taking a little bit of a nap. We are quite deep in the tournament now. I'm not surprised that he's going to be going for that. Palafin getting that haze off, though, removing on the last turn that Palafin is on the field those attack drops from the Dragonite.
Yeah, and I think this Dragonite, even if it does wake up in this situation, it's going to be really tough to bring this back. Of course, we do know it does have multi-scale available to itself as an ability, but you're going to have to find a way to break through not only Tauros, not only Meowscarada, as well as a Dondozo, Steel type in the back.
It's the Dondozo Steel type that I think is going to be the real problem here. And of course, there is the opportunity to cycle Intimidate, as we're starting to see here. The Dondozo coming out in favor of that Tauros here. Knockoff knocking off that sharp beak's going to reduce the damage that that Dragonite can do, as well as the Intimidates that are going to be coming out later in the match. We'll have to see if this Dragonite is able to wake itself up anytime soon to be able to get itself going.
Yeah, it really, really needs to if it does want to try to have any sort of chance. But the chances, honestly, do seem very, very slim, because it's going to be quite tough to be able to overturn this 3-1 deficit, as we are going to be seeing the Flower Dread critical hit, as always, going into this Flying-type Dragonite. Of course, at the with the additional bolster of damage output from the Life Orb, Terra Blast does now come out, finally, with this Waking Dragonite outrageously releasing its Terra Blast there. Does pick up the KO, but this may be a little too late, as Dondozo says, nope, you're going to be put back to sleep.
Faaiz not taking any chances here and playing correctly, I think, is the way that I would describe how Faaiz is playing. There's a few lines here that would be leading towards a victory, but the one that's absolutely guaranteed is the one where the Dragonite gets yawned, you double protect, you make sure it goes to sleep, and then when it's got its guaranteed turn of sleep, that's when you open up, that's when you attack, that's when you finish off that Dragonite.
Yeah, I mean, it's the safest play to do, and Kurt has to bank on a misplay from Faiz's side at the moment. You want to be able to maximize all potential for being able to run away with the game as much as possible. You've got certain pieces on the board that you want to make sure can guarantee you a checkmate scenario.
Exactly, and I think that's exactly where we are. It is checkmate for Kurt, I suppose. I'm not quite sure which way round that goes, but Faaiz is going to be doing the winning thing.
Checkmate has been called by Faaiz. We can confirm this, as we have both the trainers going ahead and giving each other props there. Huge congratulations to Faaiz for the remarkable amount of work and level of play that he has been able to go ahead and prevail over Kurt, which was no easy opponent. He was very tough to deal with.
I really want to shout out here for Faaiz bringing that yawn in 2 stream matches in a row and proving why it deserves that move slot. It was one of the latest additions to Faiz's team. Previously was that rest with a Chesto Berry onto that Dondozo, changing to Yawn a few days before the tournament, giving it a little bit of a test, thinking that it felt good, and showing why that it's effective in this format. So congratulations to Faaiz. He played an absolutely fantastic game, and fantastic to be able to feature Kurt as well into the top 8, because that's no mean feat.
No, it really isn't. So huge props as well as commiserations to Kurt. I think it was exceptional plays, some really, really good highlight moments, both from himself as well as Faaiz in that match. It was very entertaining, very exciting. I mean, being able to sort of spectate these players at such a high level when the pressure's really high and, you know, the quality is equal to it is honestly such a pleasure.
It really is. We have to call out that Palafin.
Oh my, you know we have to. There's no way. I'm just going to go and I'm going to clip that at some point later on because I've got to.
Absolutely, yeah. Just playing at that level, you see these sort of like telegraphed moves. You see these things that you think, yeah, okay, that's obvious. That's what happens in this situation. And these sort of players at this level go, hang on a second. What if I do this instead? And you know, that's exactly why we see these players and why we get to showcase them at this level and see exactly how they approach the game.
Throw off your opponent's balance as much as possible with unexpected plays, right? But of course, that was our first top 8 match. That was top 8A. We will be going ahead, going to a very short break, and soon after we will be progressing on to displaying our second top 8 match, top 8B. So do not go anywhere. Get your refreshments, and we'll be back shortly. And welcome back, ladies and gents and everybody else. We are here with the winners interview, which I may have actually said top 8B is coming up, so apologies there. Actually, the winners interview with Faaiz himself. So a lot of stuff going on there. Faaiz, huge congratulations for being our first top 4 trainer going into this tournament. I mean, it's amazing. Your performance so far has been absolutely stellar, and being able to see such a high intense octane set being played between yourself and Kurt has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you very much. Yeah,
How you
it
feeling?
wasn't. Yeah,
Overwhelmed? I mean, we're feeling overwhelmed.
Overwhelmed is the right word.
Yeah.
Like, it was such an intense set.
Mhm.
It was going back and forth, and I don't know. I've never been in top 4 of a regional before. I've never even been in top cut of a regional before.
Have you not?
So no.
Oh,
This
wow.
is actually my 3rd regional ever. So.
Oh my lord! Well, I mean, what a regional to do it on as well. I think with the amount of states that have been going into this, you know, like the meta with how it's been developing with Series 1 based off San Diego 2. What was your sort of general mindset going into this? You thought that, and most definitely it is, the Dondozo, that set is amazing.
That set truly
It
is
is
amazing.
quite literally, the steel Terra type is a machine of a set for it, especially with the yawn body press, you've got the wave crash and the protect. So you've got a bit of a stally affair that quite
Definitely.
nicely synergizes and marries in with that Glamora that we've been seeing you use quite consistently.
Yeah, as I've said yesterday, this is kind of a slow playing team.
Mhm.
You have a lot of turns where you don't do damage, but instead prepare your board with like Yawn, your Toxic Amon. You wait for you play reactively by protecting, waiting for their moves, looking what they lock their choice mons into. That many teams have this format. Like there's a lot of choice scarf, Tatsugiris, Goldengos with choice scarf or specs, choice band Meowscaradas and stuff like that.
You wait
choice
for your
specs
opponent to
Glimora.
overextend, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Like you need to play the slow game with this team, kind of. You have to be cautious in what they lock themselves into, and then I have I have bulky mons, protect on every single mon, and then I can react accordingly and try to find my best move to knock out all their Pokemon.
I mean, it really shows the value of Protect as a utility move,
definitely,
right?
yeah.
I know that there are still a couple of trainers, not calling out Jamie Boyd or anything, that don't like using Protect, but I think it just really goes to show for your sort of play style how much mileage you're able to actually go ahead and obtain from it, you know, control the sort of board state, which you did astonishingly well. And there were a couple of key highlight moments, and I think it's a mandatory, we're just speaking about it now. We've got to talk about that Palafin Mystic Water Zero form, let's say, where it was actually able to pick up the KO on your Meowscarada, which was, I believe, at around half of its HP. Was that unexpected completely? Because it took us by surprise.
Yeah, it was a bit lower than half. It was a fantastic play on the court side. Like, I didn't see it coming, and it felt like, I said it to you earlier as well, but it felt like this wasn't his first time doing it. Like
it's not his first rodeo.
No, definitely not. Like, he had this all planned out from the start, the Protect Palafin, low kick on Meowscarada, and then he just knew, okay, I just have to do this, and then I already have the advantage. And yeah, respects to that. I really didn't see it coming.
It was great to see, but of course, the way that you handled your situation in Game 3 as well, I think it was really unique and very calm and collected. You knew there were certain sort of scenarios that you needed to flowchart to the point where you move certain pieces in order to sort of guarantee your checkmate over Kurt. And I think one of the scenarios was you had the toxic debris set up via the Glamora that was already KO'd, and the Palafin was in the back. So the moment's going to be coming in after you already doubled into it. And I think there was another partner Pokemon by its side which went for Protect. It may have been the Golden Go, I believe. It was a turn where it could have gone for the Thunder into the Dondozo, but you didn't terrestrialize.
Yes, exactly. It was a really difficult matchup because he had all the tags, the low kick on Meowscarada, Thunder on Goldengo, which is not very commonly seen. Even Protect on Pelipper forced me to always take it into account that Pelipper could actually protect, because most of the time they run Wide Guard. So it was really tough to call the turns right, and luckily somehow it worked out.
Well, it most definitely did. I think you played exceptionally well. So going into today's top 32, how were you feeling yesterday? Were you prepping? Were you taking the time to relax a bit and sort of like cool off going into today?
So as the tournament finished rather late yesterday, I was pretty tired. I was also tired during the last few rounds. And as I was playing against other Dondozo players in the last 2 rounds, I didn't want to reveal my game plans against them because I could potentially be playing them in cut again. So I lost the last 2 rounds. It's kind of a mixture of tiredness, don't want to reveal game plan, and them just playing better, of course.
Yeah, because your resistance was already high at that point, right?
Right, because I started 7-0 and then I finished on 7-2. And going into today, I don't know. I came back home yesterday. We ate something and then I just went to sleep. I looked at my opponent's team sheet, and I had a rough idea of what I want to do. And then I don't know. I didn't really prep or anything, like not prep hard. And then it worked out in top 32 and top 16. I played against my fellow German player Christian Schulz.
Oh, did you? Oh,
yes,
wow.
and I got really lucky, I have to say. But yeah, I won.
No, I mean, you're in your flow, right? There's a certain sort of state that you go in.
Of course.
And that's the sort of importance of not over-prepping and just trying to make sure you you get some rest and sleep so you can still be in that game mode state, right?
Right.
But it's been exceptionally great to have you on stream twice now so far. Now it's going to be a 3rd time guaranteed, as you are our first semi-finalist, which is great to see. So we are wishing you the best, Faaiz.
Thank you very
can
much.
do it. Keep on pushing. We, as well as the audience back at home, are loving to see your sort of what you can bring with your team and your action and your play style. So we look forward to that. But of course, we will now be cutting to a short break, a real short break, before hopping on to our second top 8 match, which is going to be top 8B. So don't go anywhere, and we will be back.